My name is Julie Pearson Little Thunder with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at Oklahoma State Library. This interview project is supported through the Institute for Museum and Library Services American Rescue Plan grant funds. Today is July 12th, 2022, and I'm talking with Vanessa Adams-Harris, a Muscogee citizen, a professional actor and storyteller, and Director of Outreach and Alliance for the John Hope Franklin Center for Reconciliation. Vanessa, we could talk about so many things. And I realize we are in the middle of another surge now, an Omicron surge, but I'm wanting to take a look back with you and talk about your experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic as you saw it unfold here in Tulsa with your dual communities. What are your memories of the pandemic first hitting?
Well, I guess my first memories would be of my husband getting sick and we not knowing what it was. My husband is a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation. And so he came down with like what was a cold, but not really a cold. And he just had this dry cough. And so he stayed home from work. So a couple of days went by, and that was like in February of 2020. And a couple of days went by. He still had this cough. And my daughter had been traveling because my daughter works for the Girl Scouts of America in Houston, Texas. And she had actually been traveling to various countries in Europe on a recruiting expedition. And she was calling me, and that was like in January of 2020. And so she was calling me from overseas saying, Mom, when we're coming through airport security, the Asian people are being taken over into another area. And I said, I don't know. I said, I haven't heard anything. I don't know what's going on. But she said, it's just kind of weird because she had gone to several countries and she kept seeing this over and over and over again. And I said, well, just I don't know what to tell you. And she just really thought that was weird. Well, then February, when my husband gets sick with this dry cough and he makes an appointment with the doctor, the first thing that the doctor asks him is, have you been exposed to anybody from China or have you been to China? And we just thought that was a weird question. And then, a couple of days later, boom, we start hearing about it. That's my earliest memory of COVID-19.
I knew you would be good to talk to about this. Yeah, because you actually had a family member traveling internationally and then what's going on at home.
Exactly.
How did you feel then when the national news broke, when you found out what was happening?
I felt, I just kind of felt weird in not really knowing what this was. I also have a sister that works in the medical profession in California. And she was very clear about, take this serious, Vanessa. This is killing people. And she was telling me that this was already known as far back as last year in the fall. And she just was very adamant about how serious this was. And so, yeah, it was scary.
Yeah.
It was very scary. Mm-hmm.
What kinds of national coverage were you hearing initially? Do you remember?
National, as far as
when the pandemic first, when they could no longer deny it was happening.
I wasn't hearing. I wasn't. For me, for things that make sense for me, I wasn't hearing information that was like from the Native community, from grassroots. I wasn't hearing that. And so my sister in California was
Mm-hmm.
telling me, because she's in the medical profession, so she's very connected with the Native community out there in California, and she was, back and forth on the reservation out there, and so she was like, no, and it's going to hit us hardest. That's what she said. So the national news was not telling me anything that would help me. I felt.
Right. How about the messaging you got from the state of Oklahoma?
There was no messaging from the state of Oklahoma. Not that I could disseminate, that I received instantly. There was not anything locally. There was nothing from the state. There was nothing nationally. And what I'm talking about are things that, because I realize what world we live in, and so there weren't things that were speaking specifically to people of color, because that was like one of my first questions to my sisters, like, what about the people of color? Mm-hmm. What are they talking about that it looks like it's only on the perimeter of, it's only coming in on California, Oregon, Washington State area, or New York, was all this news is coming from New York. I'm thinking, like, wait a minute. Yeah, so nothing from the state.
When Muscogee Nation started disseminating information, what were you hearing? What were some?
It wasn't a lot. It was confusion. It was like everybody was going by the same script, and it wasn't updated information. It wasn't information that, like, it should have been like door-to-door information, and it wasn't.
As you mentioned many times in your public talks, the Native and African American communities here in Tulsa and all around Oklahoma have this history of hearing lies and misinformation and broken promises from the city and state. So how do you think those experiences impacted people when, in fact, we started to get more guidance nationally and statewide?
It contributed greatly to, I think, unnecessary deaths, because people were not able to, you can't just leave past behavior behind and go, oh, now I'm going to trust this. And there was so much confusion coming from coming out of New York, and what's happening, and making it look as though it's not here. And my sister was the one that would say, no, Vanessa, it's there. It's already there. It's not going to be called that just yet. And so just the continuum of what happens when you have a lack of acknowledgement of how this behavior gets started and what the roots of it are, and the impact of it on us, right?
Yeah. In your own personal decisions, how important was it for you to consult with friends and family? You mentioned your sister a number of times. How about your network of friends and contacts as you were trying to sift through?
Because my husband is super cautious, and he was working at the time. He was still working for American Airlines, and he was very adamant about doing whatever it is that we needed to do. So he retired in March, even though he had 53 years. So it was time for him to retire, but he would not have retired otherwise. But he retired because even there at American Airlines, he was concerned that people were not following protocol. They were not wearing their mask. They were not sanitizing. People were still coming to work sick, and they were still just going on. And because you have a certain culture that exists, right, he just didn't feel comfortable at all. And then he was worried that what would happen is he'd come home and bring something home to me, and then I would get sick, and there we would be. When I talk with my sister again, my sister said, whatever, if they create some type of a shot, some type of medicine, take it. She said, you just take it. And I said, okay. But, I said, but what if, I went through all this, and she's like, stop that. She's like, it's not that kind of thing. This is real. My friends that I was talking to, both Native and of African ancestry, were not on the page of trusting the government and trusting anything that comes out of the pharmaceutical community. And even though, some people had grandchildren they were caring for and older, people they're caring for, everybody is just thinking that they can disseminate this information, and now, they have access to the internet, so we can all read what it is, right? So it was a lot of confusion, like early on, and because my husband is so super cautious, and because my sister was also, I could trust what she was saying, what she was seeing, because she was one of those people that was on the front line, and she, I worried about her more just from the stress, because her husband has diabetes, and he had suffered from a stroke at one time, and then she was raising her grandson, and so her grandson was like 10 years old at the time, and so she had to go through, taking off all of her clothes before she comes into the house, putting all this stuff on, and then, it was like, so it was constant. It was just constant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Worry and stress. And we lost a lot of friends and a lot of people during this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of people that I strongly believe they didn't have to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not, and to me that is probably the most unfair part of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did you keep yourself sane? You were isolating socially. How did you keep yourself grounded and sane?
I have a big family, and I have not ever been a person that follows a crowd, right? And so it's really easy. I just say easy. It's really simple for me to say no and to stop. I know I might be fortunate in some ways, but I've had health issues before where when you have a health issue, it stops. Either you're going to totally stop, as in death, or you're going to find a way that you have to stop. Because what I know for sure is that I don't keep the world spinning, right? And it's going to keep on going without me. And I had to learn that lesson at an early age from losing my father and realizing that, the sun is still going to come up. Mm-hmm. And so I just pulled back and tried to find a way how we could still maintain access, because sometimes when you talk to, early on we were talking to people and they were just talking like, oh, well, we can't meet anymore. And I'm like, yes, we can. We can do Zoom. Mm-hmm. We can do, conference call. We can still stay connected. This, yeah, that was kind of weird. People thinking that you just have to end it.
And end all communication.
Yeah, you don't.
And you even pulled off a play rehearsal. Yeah. In the middle.
I pulled off two. too. Real Askew's Fire in Beulah was
that's
done
right.
also, and I was part of that, which
Yes.
that was amazing as well. But it worked.
Right. Yeah, you did very well.
Yeah. Well, I did a couple of things. I was part of a Los Angeles Women's Theater Festival.
Virtual as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
You got very skilled at handling those.
Yeah. It was. I'm not normally I didn't go into the side of film, right? I stayed on the side of theater.
Right.
And so that pushes you over into the side of film in a way, because you're like we are here, in front of a camera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it is just such a different deal for theater artists because that live interaction is so crucial to the magic of what happens on stage.
And the host and the space, right?
And the space.
You're in a created space for that purpose.
Yes.
And the little box that you have to be in, like for something like this, and you have to stay within this area, is just kind of like it's not the same.
And you were fortunate that you didn't get sick. You didn't.
I still have yet to have ever.
Was sick. You weren't.
Yeah. And he has since gotten it. He's tested positive.
A breakthrough.
Yeah, that was earlier this year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He got it. I still have not tested positive.
Yeah. Been fortunate. Well, you continued your church work as well. True?
Yeah, we Zoomed. Yeah, I set that up for the church, a Unitarian Universalist church, and got everybody connected because some people had started to say they were just gonna, pull back, and we were like, if you have a computer and you still want to meet, we can Zoom. And so that really kind of kept people, we got a chance to see that we were all doing the same thing, and we were all struggling in the same way. And it was so good just to see each other's faces. That was like, that was amazing because it's like, okay, so I recognize I'm familiar with these people.
Right. Not giving up that support system.
Right.
That spiritual connection.
Right.
So when they started offering vaccinations and more information, what services did Creek Nation offer, and where did you access them?
I got my vaccination down at Muscogee at, they moved from the hospital over to the bigger area. And they were open to, whatever the need was. It was a whole different kind of mindset. Mm-hmm. The website had factual information. The numbers worked. Somebody responded. And I was impressed. But on the other end, the Chickasaw Nation was like phenomenal. My husband because my husband is older than I am, and so he got a box in the mail with a mask, thermometer, wipes, oxygenator thing, and something else. And then they sent him a postcard in the mail to give him instruction on how to get vaccinated and an appointment time and a number. And all he had to do was call that number. We drove over to Purcell. It was like no issue. And, we didn't realize at the time, because he was older than I am, then they could have also vaccinated me at that time. Mm-hmm. But we didn't realize because we thought my age, I wasn't And so, trying to stay in your lane of
Right.
appropriateness. Yeah. And then they continually sent a care box for him that had those things in it. And the Creek Nation, and maybe it's because I'm not a senior, but I did get the care box for my two older sisters, right, who were seniors. Mm-hmm. But I had to call and tell them that, you need to send this box to them too. The Chickasaw Nation already knew that information.
Keeping track.
Yeah.
When the mask mandate was issued, and of course, as you mentioned, you and your husband had received PPE. What did you notice around you when the mask mandate was issued? What did you notice here in Tulsa?
I noticed that there was a struggle. And the struggle just wasn't with any particular type of people. It was a struggle with people who do not want their rights infringed upon. And so they were real clear about not wearing a mask, the mask not really doing any good. It doesn't matter if it makes you more comfortable. It doesn't make me comfortable, so I'm not going to wear it, and blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So even people at the church had that issue. People were, it seemed like they were a little bit depressed because they had this thing about it's not really going to do any good, so blah, 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 blah. And it's still kind of the effects of that thought processes is kind of still there, and people feeling infringed upon and not really feeling the collective process that goes on when there's a health issue. It's interesting, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so there was anger, there was, loud talking, and there were some people that were just like, I'm not wearing it. And yeah, it was an interesting space.
Which kind of makes everybody feel vulnerable, right?
It keeps contributing to this concept of I am in it by myself.
Well put. How did you deal with the holidays?
The holidays, I tried my sensibility because I've dealt with death at an early age and an illness at an early age. My sensibility was to not focus on what I don't have access to in the moment, but is to look forward to when I will have access to that. And so I wasn't caught up in, we have to meet, because I was worried about the other side, right?
Right.
And so I would try to remind people when I, was talking with people that wanted that immediate, connection right now with the holiday. I was like, let's think about next year, right? Let's plan for next year. We just want to make sure we get there. That was my thinking. So that's how I managed it. And my daughter being down in Houston, I didn't even let her come up. So I tried to take the responsibility or the obligation of her to come home. I tried to take that off of her shoulders, like we're not going to worry about that right now. We're looking forward to the next one. That's where we're trying to get to, is the next one.
What was one of the most difficult situations or problems you had to deal with during the pandemic?
I say it's just death, right? This is the 1-year anniversary of my sister's death, of my oldest sister, who would have been 92 years old. And that's been the hardest thing. And it's still hard. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And even being able to, sort of attend funerals, right? And
Right.
have that sense of closure.
Yeah. It's just that strong feeling that some people didn't have to die.
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
Mm-hmm. Researchers have finally decided, because we've been talking about like this kind of memory loss, special memory loss that people have during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And, they've found out that, yeah, it's a real thing. It really did impact our sense of time and our memories. What have been your struggles with that? How have you dealt with that?
My sense of that, since I have not ever been diagnosed with COVID, and I have had friends that have had it. One of my dearest friends, she and her mother both had it. Her mother had to go in and out of the hospital, and she's like 88 years old. And my friend is in her 60s, and she still has like energy drains.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a beat. Like in theater, everything is about a beat.
Mm-hmm.
And since she also is a theater artist, it's like she's missing a beat. She's like just off by one step or something. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes she gets frustrated, but then she reminds herself, oh yeah, this is the effects of COVID. And we don't know how long, that's going to be the case. But she definitely has some memory loss that she knows. And that is frustrating for her sometimes. And I could tell even with my oldest sister, because she had COVID, and as she was dealing with it, you could tell that it was different. She was different. Her memory was different. And her engagement was different. It was just that one little, just that one little beat, just like a one little thing. And I still, even though we're at this point, I'm wondering now on children, right? What's going to be their development out of this, right? How are they going to be able to develop that cognitive part of themselves more fully? But now this is going to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's what I'm noticing. Yeah.
And you had the opportunity, actually, she's a little bit older, but you went to a green corn with your niece. She came out to visit you.
Yeah.
And did she share a bit about how?
Well, we didn't get to go to green corn, right? Because of her condition at the time. But what she said, because I asked her, because she just graduated last year, right? And she is a creative being. Mm-hmm. And she's not been a person that, like myself, has done well with institutionalization. And so it was like a struggle. She struggled anyway in school. And so it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle. But because of her creativity, she was able to land in a place where it was safe. And so she's been able to kind of move into that space, which has been a good thing for her. But education-wise, it didn't help her at all. Mm-hmm. It did not help. She said she did not like the whole Zoom school thing. because it just totally kept them isolated.
Right.
And at the time, I think her parents had just gone through a divorce. And so it was like no socialization, but, the phone or something. So it was, yeah, she said she didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are your concerns as we try to move forward from this? And of course, we've acknowledged that we are in probably for more waves.
Yeah.
What are your concerns?
My concern is our emotional capability from this. Because sometimes we want to think that it's done and we can just kind of go on, and there's not really a perspective around our emotional capabilities. Has it brought us closer together? I'm not sure. Something has been created with this, and definitely a lack of trust was already there, but it's been exacerbated. And so you have a lot of things, it seems like, just frailing about, right? Not really able to grasp anything tangible. And so I'm just kind of looking at this as I am talking to different people around trauma, right? The trauma is, we think the trauma is a war that we're engaged in with maybe Ukraine and Russia, right? But the trauma is so inside of us. And so I'm worried about us having conversation and being in dialogue, intentional, us being able to depend on what our supposed places that we can go to for assistance, what can they really assist us to do? And are they prepared to be honest, being the first thing, as opposed to watching the liability part of things. So.
What would you like individuals or communities or policymakers to keep in mind for the future?
That, that we're human beings, and that we have a long history of mistreating each other. And can we just kind of focus on not mistreating each other?
That would be a big ask.
I know that's a wild concept. But when we get too much into policy, we get away from the fact that we're talking about communities. And I talk about this all the time, about Native people especially, and a tribe in particular, being about groups of families that are connected. It is not this thing of people wearing the same T-shirt and hairstyle and all that. We're talking about our families. And it's like nobody is really wanting to focus on the fact that we're dealing with families. And I don't know how people can really understand that if you don't have a connection like that. But I think it's worth delving into what is that. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add or share about your pandemic experiences?
Is that I am know that I'm fortunate that I have not had to deal with much of it. Only, through this kind of a setting have I had to engage with, even the times that I spoke with my sister. We were always on the phone, FaceTime, or just on regular phone. But my neighbors on both sides of me in Sand Springs both lost their husbands. Would not wear their mask,
Mhm.
would not get vaccinated until it was almost too late. And by then it was too late. And so it was, it was all around me all the time. And so my heart just goes out to us all, that we're of the same family. We're human
Right.
beings. So if it's happening to one group of human beings, it can happen to us. And how can we, kind of just reach out and know that we're dealing with a condition that we can all understand. We're not trusting everything. We're not sure about it. But should we deny other people the ability to have access to those resources? That is on my mind a lot. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you for your time today, Vanessa.
You're welcome, Julie.